Greetings, cultists, and welcome to the Dark Room. If the pen is mightier than the sword, and a picture says 1,000 words, then the paintbrush is the mightiest thing you can hold in your hand. Hi guys, so I know I don't normally jump straight in and shove my big, fat, haunted potato of a face on screen when I'm doing a long form painting video like this. But on this occasion, I thought I'd give you guys a bit of a trigger warning straight off the bat, because today we're going to be grappling with some themes that I know give some painters a bit of anxiety. If you clicked on the thumbnail, I'm sure you're already aware of that, but if by chance the algorithm has blessed you with an autoplay suggestion, this is your warning that today in the Dark Room we are going to be engaging in the time-honoured art of political satire. Now, I appreciate that that isn't for everybody, but rest assured, everything is very tastefully done. Britain is a land of ancient traditions. Tea, queuing, and being quietly disappointed by whoever's in charge. But every so often, that disappointment becomes so all-consuming, and the sources of that disappointment so magnificently absurd, that they transcend mere politics and start to feel like something alien, something extraterrestrial. Enter Sir Keir Starmer. I've spent the last few weeks painting him as a Genestealer Cult Magus because, frankly, it felt like the only logical conclusion. The hungry, dead eyes, the empty sycophancy, the eerie silence where humanity should be. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the hive fleet humming. This video is about what happens when politics meets Warhammer painting and the wonderful sense of catharsis that that meeting can inspire. No one does satire quite like the British. The French are good and the Americans are getting better all the time, but you just can't beat the cutting wit and tongue-in-cheek playfulness of British political humour. One of my first memories of staying up past my bedtime was sitting up with my parents watching the venerable old comedy show Spitting Image. The exaggerated features of these caricatures captured my imagination and got me interested in these powerful people that I was only vaguely aware of as a child. I wanted to know the context behind the mad antics on the show, so my parents started letting me stay up late and watch Have I Got News For You, a BBC panel show that's been running as long as The Simpsons. I thought it was hilarious how Ian Hislop and Paul Merton would devastate their guests every week, and as I grew up, the show gave me a window into the world of politics. I ended up doing a politics degree when I was older, so who says TV is bad for you? When I encountered Warhammer for the first time, I was still too young to really appreciate the satirical themes running through the setting. The way early 40k exaggerated the aesthetics and themes of religion and dictatorship was subtle enough to go over my 12-year-old head. I do remember the orcs were supposed to be football hooligans, a hot-button topic in the UK in the 80s. If you've ever wondered why orcs have Cockney accents, it's because many of the big hooligan firms were supporters of London football teams. They would regularly start fights at away games, and this London wag spread across Europe, resulting in English fans being banned from European games for 5 years back in 1985. Using the humorous form of rampaging orcs to send up this violent behaviour is the sort of cultural criticism which is at the heart of satire. I always felt this was an immensely powerful approach to challenging political ideas, as humour allows us to express frustration with the political system without resorting to violence. This coded language allows us to sneak criticism past censors and acts as a pressure valve letting people be heard when they might not otherwise. There is a fair amount of censorship happening in the UK right now, and things politically are feeling turbulent, to say the least. Frankly, I've been finding it all frustrating, as I'm sure we all have. Maybe we could use that pressure valve ourselves and have a little fun punching upwards with some political humour of our own. I know politics is, by its very nature, contentious, so I thought I would pick some low-hanging fruit for my first target. Our dearly beloved leader, Keir Starmer, has enjoyed some of the worst approval ratings on record since he began his job in July of 2024. He has enacted policies that seemingly target every kind of person in the country. He's robbed pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, stolen the birthrights of young farmers with his tax reforms, and now seems to be annoying his own base with a drastic U-turn on immigration. He's currently sitting at 22% approval rating, so as far as questions in politics go, there seems to be a solid consensus on this one. Starmer is, at the time of writing at least, the leader of the Labour Party, the main left-wing political party in the UK. Labour sprang up from the trade union movements of late Victorian England and was highly sympathetic towards the communist regimes of the 20th century. Even today, its policies are broadly socialistic, and the current leadership have storied histories and questionable ties to the socialist and communist regimes of the late 20th century. So, we have, in Keir Starmer, a traitorous, duplicitous orator leading a fifth column of collectivists preaching an alien ideology. Sound familiar to anyone? Yes, I know everyone likes to call the Tau communists of 40k, but when you really think about the consequences of communism throughout history, it's hard not to think of the great devourer of the Tyrannid swarm and their vanguard, the Genestealer cults. It's been said that the ideology of communism is like a corrosive acid, dissolving any culture it encounters. The way the ideology destroys all it touches, then breaks down base resources to be absorbed and redistributed throughout the collective, echoes the hive fleets and reclamation pools of the Tyrannid swarm so perfectly that I think we have our faction for the venerable Sir Starmer to lead. I was lucky enough to recently receive a gift from one of my viewers, Steve over at the Earthman Brick channel. This Brood Coven set will be the perfect starting point for this project. While I debated using the imposing figure of the Genestealer Patriarch, I don't think Keir Starmer quite possesses the gravitas necessary to inhabit this role. Starmer has a background in law and spent many years leading the Crown Prosecution Service, so he seems like more of a rule follower than a rule breaker to me. The Magus is the perfect choice here. A loud but brittle figure, drip-feeding the rhetoric of destruction into complacent ears, waiting for the moment of betrayal. I do have someone else in mind for the Patriarch, but that's a story for another time. I did initially think about sculpting the head for this Magus myself. However, I was quick to discover that I am no sculptor. Sculpting is a discipline all of its own, so I put some feelers out looking for a 3D artist to bring our Magus to life. After having many conversations with people and bots only interested in acquiring my email address and bank details, I was fortunate enough to encounter the work of Spear Miniatures on Discord. His stuff is awesome, and he clearly wasn't afraid of grappling with contemporary subjects, so I reached out for a chat. If you're thinking about working with a 3D artist yourself in this way, I would highly recommend that you have a face-to-face discussion like this before you hand any money over, as there does seem to be a lot of scammers out there. Thankfully, Spear was the real deal, and we got to work theory crafting the project. I knew I didn't want to settle for a lifelike rendering of Starmer. I wanted to recreate the humorous feel of those old spitting image puppets with their exaggerated, caricatured features. I set to work gathering some political cartoons from the British press and happened across the work of Morton Moreland at the Times. I felt this rendering really captured the bloviating callousness of the man, and so I sent some shots over to Spear and waited with bated breath for the results. And wow, you absolutely nailed it, brother. Now we have our head and body, it's time to get painting. Rather than focusing on the individual elements of the model like I normally do, I thought it'd be fun to be a bit more freeform on this piece. I'm going to be doing a lot of jumping around, as that's how I paint in real life, so let's roll with it in the edit and give you all the genuine ADHD experience. I start with a prime of Signal Black from Molotow. Once we have a decent coat down, I separate the head for ease of painting later. I give the model a quick zenithal highlight to pick out the features and to help me think about the volumes of the piece. As the cloak is going to be the most recessed part of the model, I begin with this. For a little extra vibrancy, I start with a thin coat of crimson ink from Dala Rowney, before moving on to my usual base tone for reds, Citadel Corn Red. This wasn't really looking dark enough for my tastes, so I start to pick out the recesses with Dryad Bark. Once the cloak is looking suitably grim, I re-establish the raised areas with Corn Red. Happy for now, I move on to basing the rest of the model. I start with Caliban Green for the vestment fabric and Rhinox Hide as the base coat for the gold. For the bone crest, I go straight in with some Screaming Skull. Normally I would base coat bone with a warm brown tone such as Rhinox Hide. For this piece, however, I wanted a cold bone, like the ashes of revolution were caked into the recesses of Starmer's armour, so I allow the prime coat to remain, darkening everything down. I'm not too sure what I'm doing with this little Genestealer on the staff just yet. He might be bone, so I give him a quick coat too. The mechanical parts of the backpack I base in Scale Colour Artist Black, as well as the straps and the staff. With most of the base coating done, I move on to layering the reds on the cloak. I pick out the raised parts of the cloak in Citadel Evil Sun Scarlet. The reds of the Citadel range are some of the best out there in my opinion, and this desaturated orangey red is perfect for our highlight. I won't be going past this as I'm not a fan of veering too far away from red into orange or pink, but Evil Sun has just the right amount of punch to make things pop while still being red. For the skin tones, I want plenty of colour, so I break out some Genestealer Purple and Kantar Blue and do some wet blending on the hands. I pick out the upward facing surfaces in purple and the lower ones with blue. I wash down the bone, and in retrospect I probably should have used Knoll Noil here, but I was on autopilot at the time and went straight to the go-to of Agrak's Earthshade, slightly diminishing our ashy armour look. Disappointing on reflection, but let's just say it's the mud of revolution instead. I start to build up the gold on the vestments with a little Hobgrot hide from Citadel. As I do this, I'm careful to leave a little brown in the recesses to keep our contrast. I pick out these features on the staff as well. For the highlights on the bone, I opt for Screaming Skull, again being careful with those recesses. Now that the vestments are dry, I go back with some Scale Colour Artist Primary Yellow, mixed with a little ivory. Carefully picking out the edges and tips of the shapes, this mix brings out the shine and sells the overall colour as gold. To add some highlights to the hands, I overbrush a little rack art flesh, allowing the side of the brush to pick out the complex shapes and not going too hard with my placement. I want Starmer's hands to look darker than his face, as though he's presenting an acceptable face to the public while the sleight of hand occurs in the dark. I finally decided what to do with our little staff bro here. I want to take the opportunity to add some nice detail, so I opt to paint him in the traditional Genestealer colours. I pick out the shapes of the carapace in Dark Reaper and the head, feet and joints in Genestealer purple. Once dry, I do a spot highlight with Thunderhawk blue and pink horror, concentrating the colours on the spiny edges of the shapes. I employ the same technique on the mechanical parts, mixing up some Liquitex heavy body acrylic white and Scale Colour Artist black to create a gradient of greys on my palette. I start with a flat mid-tone, then move up the gradient to the brighter greys, picking out the edges and points. For the gems, I wanted an accent colour that wasn't green, so I opted for a vibrant blue. I base with Kantar blue, then use some white to sketch out the reflections. I like to use the shape of a one-eyed smiley face for this, a curved line along the bottom of the gem, followed by a single dot in the upper right-hand side. I tint the curved line with some Citadel Ahriman blue. This is an easy, reliable approach to gems, files, or anything that you want to put a shine on. For the holsters, I pick out the edges in Dryad bark, followed by Deathclaw brown before tinting it back down with some Agrax Earthshade. This gives us a nice roughed up look of old leather. We are nearing completion of the body, but I want a little more brightness on the staff. I head back to my gradient of greys and boost the contrast along the width of the shape. Once I'm happy, we can put the body to one side and crack on with the head. I start off the head the same way as I did the hands. I use Kantar blue on the bottom and Genestealer purple on the top, making sure recesses like the eyes and ears were a nice deep blue. For the hair, I leave the white of the Zenithal and just do a quick pass in Apothecary white for now. As the eyes are the most important feature on a face, I start with them. I use some black to further darken the recesses, then apply dots of white to the eyeball. I line up a sharp tip of black and snipe some pupils into place, although I had the classic thing of one eye being fine and another being a pain in the backside. One day I'll be able to do this first time, but I think I had to do 3 or 4 attempts on the eyes as the face progresses. Let's just imagine old Keir Starmer's eyes are rolling around after seeing some hurty words on the internet. I start to work up the flesh tones with some rack art flesh, taking care to leave our deep purples and blues in the recesses. This was a challenging face to paint. The shapes are exaggerated, so I wanted to leave large areas of the undercoat to sell the contrast. This meant one wrong move would require some awkward corrections, so I take my time and enjoy the process of bringing our great leader to life. Looking back at my reference shots, I can see Morland has used reds in the recesses to sell Sir Starmer's hypertensive pallor. So I pick out the folds of his neck and mouth with some Carroburg crimson, before layering back over in rack art flesh. A little fiddling and we have something straight out of Spitting Image. Time to get things together, so I secure the head in place. I'm careful with the angle I place the head at, as I want to give the impression he's looking down his nose at his followers with complete and utter contempt, just like real life. As I have some future diorama plans for this Magus, I don't worry too much about the base. For now, I print off some industrial bases I found free on Cults 3D and work up some true metallics on there. I start dry brushing with Vallejo air colour dark aluminium, then wash everything down with Agrax Earthshade. I come back with some dull aluminium and pick out some features with air colour copper. I do a victory lap of black round the rim, a quick matte varnish, and it's on to the glamour shots. Mark Twain once wrote that politicians and diapers must be changed often, and for the same reason. While half of me hopes that our Prime Minister is still in his post by the time this video goes out, the other half thinks it might soon be time to change this particular diaper. Watching Sir Starmer's first year in power has been like watching a man speedrunning his way to being the most hated Prime Minister in British political history. One bewildering policy after another has left me frustrated, and listening to him fumble every single statement he makes to the public has been utterly exhausting. The act of picking up a paintbrush and hitting back at this oppressive political atmosphere was hugely liberating. I painted this on Discord with some bros, and we could not stop laughing about it. Everyone who I've shared work in progress pictures with couldn't help but riff on the idea, and it was so nice to use the medium of Warhammer painting to start discussions that went beyond the paints that I'd used. It was great to work with such a talented artist on this project. Spear Miniature's detailed and expressive sculpt work captured the demeanour of Starmer perfectly, and this process allowed me to peek into the totally alien world of 3D modelling. I did a short interview with Spear about his work on the project to use as B-roll for this video, but it's too interesting to chop up into bits, so I'll be posting the whole thing here on the channel very, very soon. A huge thank you to Spear for his work on this project, and I'll be sharing all of his links down in the description, so do please go and check out his work. If you like what you've seen here today, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe share the video with someone you think would enjoy seeing our beloved leader reconceptualized as a treasonous Genestealer Magus. The channel has just passed 1,500 subs, and we are now officially a YouTube partner, so huge thank you to everyone who's watched, liked, and commented on the videos over the last year. You are awesome. I think we all underestimate our power as miniature painters. We know how to command attention with colour. We know how to craft narrative in the fold of a cloak, the angle of a base, or the eyes of a model staring just a little too far past the viewer. That's not hobbying, that's visual rhetoric. Warhammer painters are sitting on an underused goldmine of expression. Every painter who's ever free-handed a purity seal, converted a character, or weathered a tank to make it look like it crawled through hell, you already know how to tell stories. You already have the tools to say something that matters. Let's make art that points fingers. Let's build dioramas that drag hypocrisy into the light. Let's kitbash our anger, dry brush our heartbreak, and edge highlight the weird little corners of culture and politics that no one is brave enough to talk about. As George Orwell once said, in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Painting it might just be as well. So the next time you sit down to prime a model, ask yourself, what do I really want to say? And say it loud in acrylic. Thank you, cultists. And I'll see you next time in the dark room.